Okay, so we're moving into part three of the Progressive Era, and what we're going to look at today is the accomplishments of some of these progressive leaders, such as Jane Addams. Now, Jane Addams was the founder of Hull House, and what Hull House was a place for immigrants to be able to go to help deal with the pressure and struggle that they had with assimilation. Now, if you remember in the handout that we worked on that was titled Americanization of Immigrants, it also discussed how there was a lot of pressure on immigrants to assimilate their own culture with American society, to Americanize them. Now, a lot of times people were coming from places that didn't even have English as their official language, and so it was very difficult for immigrants coming into this new country, and Jane Addams and Hull House did help make that transition a little easier. Now, Ida B. Wells, she launched an anti-lynching crusade in the South. Now, when you think about the South, remember that that was primarily agricultural, and that's where you had a lot of slaves and whatnot. And so the culture of white versus black there was really evident, and there were still issues such as lynching happening there. Now, lynching, what this is to kill somebody by hanging them. Okay, so lynching is hanging, and what Ida B. Wells wanted to do was end. She was against this type of violence against what was primarily African American community in the South. Now, going along with the issue of African American progress, you had two other leaders, two male reform leaders, who were trying to help their community in that struggle. The first you have is W.E.B. Du Bois, and he was the founder of the NAACP. NAACP is an acronym for National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and what he argued for was immediate and complete equality, meaning blacks, whites are equal in all ways. Now, Booker T. Washington also wanted the advancement of the African American community, but what his argument is that white people weren't going to grant them equality as quickly as the community would like. And so what he said is that they should work towards gradual equality. He thought it would be too much of a shock. Now, W.E. Du Bois highly criticized Booker T. Washington. While he praised his work and his efforts to help the community, he thought that his stance on equality was weak. And so Du Bois didn't like the idea of gradual equality. What Du Bois wanted was immediate equality. So this is one of the biggest difference between these two. And on the worksheet that we had comparing and contrasting these two, that's what you should have gotten out of it. Okay, and so what we're also going to be looking at is reforms or changes. Remember, the word reform means to change. Municipalities, and the word municipal has to do with a town or a city. So remember that during the Gilded Age, there was a lot of corruption, there was a lot of abuse, and so what the reform did during the Progressive Era was correct these abuses. Okay, they also expanded city services to deal with urban overcrowding. Remember, there was huge urbanization. You had your tenements. You had huge numbers of populations moving into these areas, and with this overcrowding came the issue of fire hazards. And so these reforms helped to solve these problems, and which is part of the reason why today we have, fire codes, we've got fire alarms that are required to be in buildings, etc., because of the issues that were being faced during these previous times. Also, there was a lack of public services, and reformers in this area aimed to solve these problems. All right, so let's look at reform of state government. Now, Robert La Follette he served in many capacities in the state of Wisconsin, and he was also known as Babbling Bob La Follette, and he quickly became one of a few very well-known progressive leaders, and he worked against the trusts, as did Teddy Roosevelt. Now, Teddy Roosevelt was also a political figure who was a part of the progressive movement, and he would eventually become our president. Now, he did run as a progressive back in 1912, even though it was unsuccessful, but he did eventually become our trust-busting president. Okay. Now, some of the reforms that were put into place that are still used today are these three here: initiative, referendum, and recall. Now, think about that word initiative. If somebody tells you, oh, you should take the initiative to get that done, what does that mean? That means that you need to start yourself. No one's going to tell you how to do it or what to do it. So in this case, in the terms of politics, if there were community members who wanted something to get done, then they had to take the initiative to do that. And they needed to, first off, get enough signatures on a petition, and once they got enough people on their side, then what they could do is they themselves could introduce bills. Now remember, a bill is a proposal for a law. So if they wanted a law to happen, then what they could do, what the voters can do through initiative, is start with the petition process, and that way they can introduce the bill themselves to be voted on by majority popular vote. So referendum. Referendum, look at this part, refer. When you refer something, you give it to somebody else to kind of look at and examine. Now, referendum kind of deals with that. So what referendum is when Congress decides that the people should have a direct vote on a bill. So they say, well, you know what, we're not going to decide on this issue. What we're going to do is we're going to give it to the American people, and they will decide through popular vote. So initiative is also popular vote, but initiative is started by the citizens, whereas referendum is Congress referring this law to the people. Okay. Now, recall. I'm sure you've heard that word in other areas of American life, like, you know, when a product is recalled, means that, oh, it's no good, you got to take it back. And that's kind of the case here in dealing with the political side of it. Recall meaning that there might be some officials that are really, they're not doing a great job. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so we want to get rid of them. We want to remove them. And there is a process, there's a procedure, and that's what recall is. Recall is a procedure to remove an elected official before their term is up, saying, you know what, we don't want them here anymore, we need to get them out. And so recall, there's a procedure for that. The 16th Amendment was also brought into play. Now, the 16th Amendment created an income tax, which was still in place today. We all pay taxes. And the 17th Amendment called for the direct election of senators. Okay, so that was really important because that put a lot of power back into the public's hands. All right, so that's the end of this video. Please make sure that you took notes on it because we're going to be transferring a lot of that information into our interactive notebooks. Please don't write anything on the interactive notebooks just yet until I give you directions to do so. All right, see you tomorrow.